Alright, so I have some riveting gameplay on my screen, and this is like the third time I'm recording this, holy shit. But, I try to avoid stop killing games. I try to avoid talking about it because a lot of people think I'm wrong about it. I personally don't think it's gonna pan out the way people think it does, you know? But I try to not talk about it because it gets into gamers, and gamers are very confidently wrong about everything. Anyways, so I had said in opposition to stop killing games, I said private servers may be a violation of child safety laws because people don't realize this, but when Minecraft, they do have private servers, but everything connects to a Microsoft account. That doesn't mean you can't host a private server, but it means that on consoles, you will have to use a Microsoft account in order to access Minecraft on any of these servers. And what Nintendo said was, in their press release for allowing multi-platform Minecraft, was that they were satisfied with Microsoft's moderation, like to action player accounts for violation of terms of service or whatever else, you know, because that's important when you're dealing with other console manufacturers legally, these other platform holders. If you want your platforms to interact, you have to have compatible like moderation. And in Japan, I'm sure that they have some form of required, I don't even know really. But basically, I was like, I think they probably have some sort of regulation that they have to follow in order to remain compliant with child safety laws. And what I'm realizing now is maybe that wasn't a problem before, but it's a problem now. And that is because what has just come out was the UK Child Safety Act. And what that means is for any game with user interaction, you may actually have to provide a government ID showing that you are of age. Or if it's for children, you will have to show a government ID showing that you are of child age or whatever. And what that means is, so remember, there's a problem with cost, right? Where I had also said about stop killing games, I said, shifting liability onto private server owners probably is not a good solution. That's why it's going to be hard to push it in Parliament, because these bigger companies, they have the means to afford infrastructure, GDPR compliance, that kind of thing. If you give a private server owner free reins of everything, or, like, what are you going to do when you try to find them? Where are they hosting their server? Can you even find them if they host it in Russia? As we do with a lot of private servers right now, they're hosted in Russia because it's legal to do stuff over there. Since they got rid of their copyright law. So there's a lot of people say that I'm misrepresenting everything, but, I don't think I am, really. And what has happened is a game called Urban Dead has come out, and they are an old community-run MUD, which is like a text-based adventure game, like an RPG, but you can talk to other people in your terminal, basically. And they came out and said, we can't afford the infrastructure required to do third-party age verification, so we may actually have to shut down due to this UK Child Safety Act. And the US has proposed their own. We may end up getting a similar law over here. And that's why I said I don't know if Stop Killing Games is going to fly in Parliament if they end up proposing private servers, because now private servers may actually be in violation of UK child safety laws, like actually for real this time, even if they weren't before. So that may actually put a huge roadblock up for this kind of thing, because you do have to shift liability over to these private server owners, and I don't know if that's gonna pan out. So anyways, what I have learned from this fucking Child Safety Act is there are a lot of people who are bringing up the same age-old argument, which is you are a failure of a parent if you have not protected your child online. Now, I don't know if you have ever been a child. I know most of my audience probably grew up with computers in some form or fashion with the internet. I don't think any of you are that old, but who knows, maybe you're a fucking boomer, I don't know. Anyways, so where was I going with that? What the fuck? So anyways, if you have grown up with the internet, you remember that one of the first things you did, I remember one of the first things I did was I started playing like online browser games, and there was a way to interact with people. I would join little chat rooms. Back then it was IRC. Nowadays you got Discord. You got ways to interact with people, and sensitive content comes up a lot, especially like on Matrix, there's fucking people spamming gore and CP and whatever the fuck else they want to spam over there. But, as a child, what do? Like, I remember when I was a child, I think I would freaking started looking up porn at like the age of 12, like, as everybody does. You can't stop it. And I don't really think that calling people failures as parents is the right move, because, like, are you going to breathe down your child's neck every second of the day when you pretty much have to give them a computer in order to do their schoolwork or whatever the fuck else? People will say that, just having a site block list is fine, but, like, what the fuck? If you have to block every bit of social media on the entire internet for them never to see any sensitive content ever, you just can't do it. I was able to bypass that shit as a kid. Everybody can. Like, they'll figure it out, and if not, something will slip through the cracks. We live in the digital age now. You can't stop your child from having access to a computer. So basically what they're saying is you are a failure as a parent if you haven't completely isolated your child from the internet, and that's just not a solution. But it's, of course, there's the same argument people make that your child is a special snowflake because they weren't exposed to the world at a young age, so they never got hurt, they never fell down at the playground, or if they did, they got Neosporin immediately, they never had to deal with anything, never had to put in a hard day's work at the age of 12, whatever the fuck else, But these are the same people that will say that as a parent, you should have had complete autonomy over everything your child does day in and day out. And the problem is, like, this argument may have worked, like, when computers were new and nobody fucking knew about computers, but nowadays, ever since the age of the smartphone, like the iPhone, now, like, everybody is hooked into the internet all day, every day. Like, you got a fucking internet in your pocket, like, that's just the way the world's going. So, like, what do you do? How do you keep your child from viewing this content? And I honestly think, like, to be real, you have to regulate it. Like, that's the only way you're going to get around this. Because we've tried the click a checkbox and say you're over 18 to do things. That was like the fucking Wild West of all of it. Now you got to do government ID. That's just the way it's going to work. By the way, do not bring up the fucking T app. The T app is not a valid argument. And the reason why is because the T app was vibe coded. They really need to be, like, whoever fucking wrote that needs to be sued into oblivion for, like, whatever the fuck laws they broke by taking government ID and keeping it in a public Firebase bucket. I am sure that is a violation of so many, like, cybersecurity regulations. It's not even funny. Like, that is fucking retarded. But, like, people are saying, oh, you can't give it to anybody. Anybody can be hacked. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure anybody can be hacked. But if I remember correctly, the regulation was that you upload your ID, they verify it, and then they're supposed to delete it. Like, they're supposed to actually delete the data when they're done using it. And that's what happened with Google, where I had to give them my government ID in order to link my fucking GitHub to my page. And, they deleted it in like 30 days and they never asked for it again. So, I was okay with it because, like, I trust Google security. I don't trust anything else about them, but I do trust their security pretty well. They are pretty security conscious. So, like I'm saying, though, like, it's just a bad, like, have you ever heard when people, like, make fun of people that have gotten scammed, and they, like, they say, oh, how could you have fallen for that? That's, like, the easiest scam in the book, Oh, you gave gift cards to some Indian dude on the fucking phone because he said your computer has virus, like, oh, how'd you fall for that? You must be a fucking idiot. How did these people fall for these obvious Telegram bots that say, oh, get a free PS5, just send us $50 for shipping? Like, people fall for it. That's why they do this. It works. And it embarrasses people when they come out with stories of being scammed and they don't mention them because people humiliate them. And they'll tell they can't tell anybody that they got scammed, you know. Like I'm always giving my mom a hard time, but I try to give her the advice she needs to not get scammed again, and then she still does it anyways. But it's the same thing with this. You can't call people failures of parents because their child is accessing content that they don't want them to access, you know. It's not polite. One, it's kind of a shitty thing to say to somebody, but the other thing too is like these parents probably want to come out and say that they're in support of this regulation because they have noticed that either their child or their friends' children or whatever are accessing sensitive content that they shouldn't be accessing. And there's no system in place to stop them from doing it, you know, other than a fucking checkbox and, oh, I'm over 18, you know?
Are we on video?
Yeah. Sorry, that was my mom. She was getting scammed again. Anyways, so you can't just like blindly say that everybody's a fucking failure because like people will say, you know, why didn't you put adequate protections in? It's like, what the fuck are these protections that you're proposing, by the way? What are you actually gonna do? You know? Like, yeah, you can put up a site filter, but what the fuck do you do if your kid accesses an IRC channel, a Matrix channel, Discord, XMPP, whatever the fuck they want to use? You're not gonna fucking block everything. You know, you can't do it. Like, it just doesn't work. I know I got past that shit as a kid. I know everybody can get past that shit. You know, it's we live in an age now where everybody has a computer. You have to do something about this. Like, seriously. I don't have kids. I don't want kids. Fuck women in general, honestly. But I don't like how people are treating these parents, you know? I don't like it when people humiliate other people for being what they consider, you know, absent or negligent or whatever, you know, that they I don't even know, like, they're not, obviously. Like, if I was a parent, my kid would probably, if my child was 12 or 14 or whatever, they'd probably already be watching porn and there'd be nothing I can do about it. You know, I just can't. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And so I'd like people to keep that in mind, that we are in the digital age now, and you have to expect new regulation to come out, because everybody wants to say that the politicians are fucking billion years old and whatever. Eventually they will die, and we will, in the next 20, 30 years or so. That's kind of something I asked my dad one time. I said, Dad, am I going to be at an age at one point where I am not going to be able to keep up with new technology, and I'm going to start getting scammed, and I'm going to start hating this new technology? You know, is there going to be a cutoff for me? And I've noticed already in millennials that they have this problem, but I think these are people that are less tech savvy than people like me. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people, and it's not even just tech unsavvy people, but there's a lot of people that they saw AI and they just saw something to hate. They saw it as replacing things that they liked with slop or whatever, and I didn't see it that way. You know, I always saw crypto as kind of a useless thing, but AI, I thought it actually served some sort of a purpose, you know? But we're in this... but we're at this point, though, where people are starting to look at new technology and they're saying, I don't like this, I want this to go away. You know, and you will be able to start telling these people that are basically Luddites in comparison to the rest of the world, you know. Now, granted, I don't really use AI, you know, I'm just going to use that as an example. I don't really use it. It doesn't really do what I need it to do yet. And I really just prefer using a search engine, honestly, for most everything, because I've tried, you know, Kaizen's always trying to get me to use it for documentation and stuff, and I'm like, man, I don't understand what it's trying to tell me, though, because I don't understand the concepts yet. So it's not going to be useful for me, and I don't know how to tell if it's wrong or not because I don't know how to use the software yet. But I'm not seeing, like, you can tell the people who are going to be cut off from this new world, where they have set their cutoff point, and I do think that, as much as I hate to say it, this is a huge hot take, but I do think that government ID will become a necessary evil for stuff like adult content or age verification or whatever the fuck else. Anti-bot protection, that's what Google's using it for. That's another reason for it. I think, we've reached the point in ClearNet where the internet is an extension of your daily life, and it is not only how you interface with the internet, but honestly how you interface with reality itself. Like, let's be real. It's kind of a philosophical way of looking at it, but you do use a computer every day, and at least I'm sure pretty much all of you do. I know I do, and if I'm not on my computer, I've got my phone in my pocket that I can instantly access the internet at any time. So we do have to start looking into how to accurately regulate, or like how to what would you even call that? Adequately regulate stuff like age verification, because that, whether you are a human or not. Like, imagine how many Cloudflare checks you would have if you could just give them your government ID and be like, "Look, I'm a human. I've got an ID and a face photo." And like I say, I'm kind of looking towards the future. I've seen this coming a fucking mile away because I've already had to do it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I don't really like that very much, that I have to give Google my ID to link my GitHub. That doesn't seem like something that should require that. But I've done it, And honestly, if Discord or whatever said they need my government ID and a face photo, fuck it, I'll give it to them. I don't think they will get hacked, honestly. So, everybody's saying it's going to get hacked because oh yeah, I was talking about the T app. So the T app was fucking vibe coded. Like, they put everything in a public Firebase bucket. What the fuck? Like, this was going to happen. And they got caught with their pants down because they didn't know how the fuck to code. But if you have a third-party government associated entity, I know in the U.S., the Biden administration proposed a lot of, or not proposed, but they added a lot of strict cybersecurity regulation, and we talked about it a bit at the security conference. And, so not only do you have, like, quantum encryption and all that, but obviously your shit won't be in a public fucking bucket. Like, what the fuck? You will be liable for your security, and as long as the vendor is liable, you shouldn't have a problem, honestly. Because, like, nobody wants to get sued for $10 fucking billion because they lost everybody's government ID, Like, I know obviously there's been, like, not Clear, it was Envoy, whatever the fuck. It was some huge, like, financial hack that got everybody's fucking socials and everything pwned. I mean, it happens, obviously hacks happen. But you are obviously a lot better off giving it to a government entity, or even like a corporate government associated entity, than you are giving it to fucking feminists on some app that's been vibe coded. Like, what the fuck? Not even fucking, like, apples or oranges, fucking not even in the same ballpark, you know what I'm saying? Like, not even fucking close. But anyways, like, this is just kind of a statement, to people, is try not to throw out that people are shitty parents, because obviously the government sees past that. Like, you can say that the government is trying to protect people from themselves, and they are, obviously, but to say that parents just should have done better is completely nonsensical, honestly. It's not a solution. It's never been a solution. Anybody who grew up with computers can tell you that's not a solution. The government knows it's not a solution. Like, yeah, obviously. Like, holy shit. And I do think that I'm not gonna, like, call you a shitty person if that's what you think these parents are, but you are horribly misinformed or naive, or you have done something very specific to your children that is not being done to anybody else's children. I'm not even talking about fucking parents that give their 3-year-old an iPad. I'm not even talking about that shit. I'm talking about just anybody who has a child that has a computer anywhere in their lives, whether it be at a friend's house or fucking whatever. You can't breathe down your child's neck day in and day out. Like, it's just unrealistic, But like I said, I do think this is the way things are going. I'm personally not, while I'm not a fan of it, I'm also not necessarily against it for ClearNet stuff. I made a video a while ago called, I think I called it Always Have a Contingency Plan, and this is one of the scenarios I was kind of predicting. I don't think I mentioned it in the video, but there's a lot of things I don't mention in videos. But one of them is, if you're really unsatisfied with how the ClearNet is going, there's a difference between, like, there's three different types of internet, right? There's ClearNet, there's deep web, and there's dark web. ClearNet refers to anything you can access with the fucking HTTP URL. That is the ClearNet, normal internet. The deep web is anything that's on a Google search. So if you log into your hospital's webpage, you are now on the deep web. Something that you can't access by just going to Google. And dark web is anything routed over Tor. So if you are not already on the dark web, you need to get on the dark web, because eventually I think that's where the way things are going. Not only dark web, but you also need to be on decentralized communication. If you're on Discord, you need to add all of your friends on fucking XMPP Matrix. You need to add me on XMPP and Matrix because I am your friend. You need to talk to them on IRC. You need to do whatever the fuck you need to do to get them off of Discord. You need to have their phone numbers. You need to have their Signal, whatever way you decide to communicate, their WhatsApp. I mean, obviously WhatsApp's in the same fucking position, but it is ironically encrypted, like end-to-end encrypted, which is something Telegram isn't. Yeah, you need their telegrams. You need to be on 20 different platforms at this point. You need to be on Revolt. You need to be everywhere, basically. Like, you need to have a plan in place in case any of these services go down, because there's going to be a lot of people you're going to miss, you know. And Luke Smith one time said, don't immerse yourself too much in the internet. Don't talk to a lot of people online. He said they're all losers, and to an extent he had a point, but something he neglected was why people are so addicted to these online relationships that you have with just random strangers. You may not even like them as people, but you do have a relationship with them. They are in your social circle. And what I found was, I really like these platforms because you can get into these hobby groups, and these hobby groups are like wealths of information. There was a video by Folding Ideas called Why It's Rude to Suck at Warcraft, and they were talking about guilds, you know, like a guild in a video game, and why people like to join guilds and why you need to join a guild. And the reason why was because guilds are defined by some sort of sociologist or something. They said that guilds are basically repositories of knowledge. The way they play the game, the things they know about the game, the way that they play, these are all things that the guild does. And if you join a Linux Discord or a Linux Matrix or a Linux XMPP or whatever, you will find a group of people that have a wealth of knowledge. They may not always be correct, but you can have arguments with those people day in and day out if you want to. But there is an amount of information that these people have, and accessing it is a huge boon. I actually prefer to get a lot of my information by talking to people, because I found from documentation that I write documentation in a way I understand it, where it's very plain language and it doesn't expect the user to know anything. But I prefer a lot of the time where when I was like learning Gentoo, I would ask people questions, because I would read the docs and I'd be like, I don't really understand it. And they would explain it to me in a way that made more sense to my mind, you know? And that's something that you need to be able to do, is to be able to get into these groups, to have hobbies, to talk to people, you know, because, like, obviously, you know, he wanted you to get offline and do everything yourself, you know, but being part of a community is a huge boost to your self-worth as a person, you know. And children are going to find themselves in these groups too. Yeah, see, I'm actually roping it around to what I was supposed to be talking about. And children will find themselves in these groups, and they're going to start stumbling upon content that they may not understand, or that may be sensitive in nature, or whatever the fuck else, because people have, you know, obviously adult content is everywhere. And you want to make sure that your child is not only protected but also understands what they're looking at, and that's why obviously they have stuff like the birds and the bees and that talk you're supposed to have with your kids, and then the government will give your child sex education in school, because they're going to stumble across this, and you don't want them to become to have problems due to this. But like I said, I don't think you can consider it a parental responsibility to police the internet for their child. That is why these activist groups have such strength, is because the government sees things in a way that these people do not. And I personally agree with it, honestly. Like, I know that sounds bad coming from like a Linux privacy nut job, but like I think that ClearNet really does serve a different purpose than dark web, and from the circles I'm in, where the stuff I do, I know it's not going to be regulated because it just can't be. I'm on like fucking anonymous communication and shit. It's just not going to happen. But like with ClearNet, it's kind of a different story. That's how people just interact with the world around them. Like ClearNet obviously is the normal internet. That's where everybody's at, and if there is a legitimate reason to protect children from, because we already did have this regulation, like it was, you have to verify you're 18 to access a nicotine dispensary website or whatever, or buy alcohol, access websites with alcohol on them, order things over the phone, all that. But there was no verification in place to ensure that the child was actually, or was to verify that the child was not a child, and that's always been I've always been skeptical of that. It's always been a joke. It's always been a fucking joke. We always joked about that. It's like, yeah, as kids, oh yeah, I'm over 18. I think my first Google account, I said I was over 18, and it's not real, it's like a half-assed measure, but I could argue day in and day out about this. I'm sure everybody in the fucking world disagrees with me, but I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm going to say that this is kind of an older mentality that'll mostly be seen by like millennials for the most part, because they didn't grow up with having to give their government ID out to different companies or the government itself or whatever, and I think that mentality will die off very quickly as this new generation comes in. Because that's the thing, it's kind of interesting to see that people are turning into the boomers, that they're having the same ideas, they don't quite get it, they tried not to be like their dad, and then they ended up exactly like him, and that was just something I noticed, was that people are starting to draw their line in the sand, and there are suddenly those grandparents that don't understand how to use their, or that don't want to use the new technology. They don't want to be part of the world, and that's fine. You don't have to be part of the, like, you don't have to integrate that well, and just, god damn it, cat. Like, you don't have to be like that, but for the rest of the world that does want to integrate, I do think that it'll be this is kind of the regulation that has been coming for a long time, and people are upset about it because it is finally coming to get them, You don't have to see my nicotine IP. So anyways, but yeah, this is that one comment I saw kind of pissed me off, though, where it's like everybody wants to blame the parents, and it's like within one fucking generation we've gone from show your child the world to isolate your child from the world. And I think that once that mentality changes, where people finally accept that computers are part of the world now, like everything's online. You have a computer in your pocket, it's in your house. You probably have multiple computers. I know I've got like fucking 10 computers, you know? There's entire hobbies dedicated to computers. There's games on computers. Like, you interact with people on computers. When you're not at school, you're talking to somebody on a computer, whether it be your cell phone or PC or whatever. Your console is basically a computer, you know, for all intents and purposes, except it pretty much just plays games and browses the internet. But, you know, like, everything's a computer now, and we got to get used to that. So, what are you gonna do? You know, what are you actually gonna do? All right, I'll see ya.